Hello, and thanks for looking back at the channel. And I'm just following this nice Wrenn 060R1 in BR black around the main line. We had a good look at this last week, and I have had one more session with it, so it's starting to run in, and it's running really nicely. And look what I've got behind it. I've got a couple of Hornby 00 super detail Western style British Rail coaches and one of the converter wagons, so I can pull it easily. Okay, well, I did say we'd probably be carrying on with a bit of a Wrenn theme, and we're going to revisit this model today. This is number 2218 or W2218. You can see this is an earlier star box, so before this catalogue. Now I am battling the glare again, but I thought we'd just try and take a little look at the model in the catalogue. I hope you can see it there, W2218. Really nice Hornby 00 derived 264 4MT tank. This one in BR livery. And what about the price? So W2218, and look at that, £12.86. So hefty old price. Probably wasn't quite as much as that in the early 70s, because I think this is an early 70s version. But anyway, we did see this on the channel before, and I'll try and leave a link in the description box, because even though it was running nicely, there were a couple of issues. Now I am going to edit in a couple of still photos, because the other night I just thought it'd be great to put this back how it needs to be. So we're going to take a look at that in a minute. But when I was reading through a couple of bits of the paperwork, this was quite interesting. It says, in addition to the guarantee of quality, we are prepared to factory service Wrenn locomotives at a nominal all-in charge of 12 shillings and sixpence per loco. Simply return the locomotive to us with a postal order to cover the full cost. And obviously, in the case of misuse or severe damage, we reserve the right to quote extra. But yeah, for those people that wanted their loco servicing, that was probably a really good option. Okay, now let me see if I can just remove the packing rings carefully. I'm holding the camera. Can't go over to my other workbench today because it's in a bit of a mess with some other stuff, but we can take a look at this quite nicely here. I've put a bit of bubble wrap down. So let me just lift it out of the box. There we go. And perhaps stand it up, because the issue I had with this loco was there were two buffers broken off. One at the rear and one at the front. Now in the photos that should be coming up over the top of the video track, you can see these are sort of riveted in at the factory, and they're very brittle. There's some sort of die cast, or they're even Mazic themselves. So the only way to fix them, I've found, if they're snapped off, is to drill them through. And I do that with a 1mm drill bit, and then I just use a really strong CA glue with an accelerator. So you put the glue on, get it all in position, and give it a quick spray with the accelerator, and it goes rock hard. But let's see if we can have a look at this. I deliberately didn't fill in the drill bit, so if you look at the right hand buffer, you can just see that round remnant of a drill bit, but I'm going to leave that. It's kind of like a war wound, but the buffer's back on and it's looking good, and it is very strong. And likewise with the rear. Let me just see if I can see which one it is. Yeah, it's the one on the right. So I didn't drill all the way through that buffer. I just drilled into it and then through the body and put it back on. And I think it looks pretty good. So I'm pleased, because it's a lovely loco in really nice condition. Very nice body shell. I think the only damage I could find was a small piece of lining missing on this cylinder. But what I want to do today is pop this on the main layout, and I'm going to put it behind these coaches we saw the other day, and then we'll have a short running session of the two BR Black Wrenn tank locos together on the layout. So right now I'm just going to tidy up here and get this on, and I'll be back with you in just a minute. Right, well, it did occur to me that something that I was going to do a video on ages and ages ago and never got round to, it might be that we're approaching a great opportunity to talk about it. So just before we do go and have a bit more running on the main lines, let's take a look at this Hornby W.R version of this model, where it all started. The original, now this is the 3-rail 264, and the thing I want to show you is at the back. Now let me just see if I can grasp it, get it into shot. Have a look at the back of the magnet. Now you can see the magnet with the red dot on it, and what you might notice is there's a lug that sticks up from the chassis with a screw in it, and a spring, and a piece of metal. Now you might be thinking, well, what's that? Well, Hornby W.R experimented for some time with a variable magnetic adjustment on this particular type of loco. Now I don't know whether I can do it if I can get the screwdriver in, but it's a bit difficult holding the camera. But what I'm going to do is just undo this screw, and what you should see is that piece of metal is closing in to the magnet, and now it's all the way down onto the pole pieces and the magnet, and then I can turn the screw the other way and bring that piece of metal away from the magnet. Now the idea of this was to be able to change the magnetic properties of the motor, so you could improve either the smoothness of running at slightly higher speed or slower speed. I don't think it was a great success because this was the only model that they ever tried it on. And look at this, Wrenn didn't continue. Now I think the later versions of this model had the hole blanked in, but you can see on this early one we've still got the adjusting hole in the bodywork. The only thing we haven't got is the shunt. Now if you do look at the pole pieces, they're a little bit longer than the magnet, so unlike on the 3-rail model where the pole pieces and the magnet are the same length, this Wrenn one, they're a little bit long. But do you know what I'm going to do? For next week's video I'm going to take these pole pieces and swap them out for some spares I've got that are the right length, and then I'll remagnetize it, and then we'll do a few running tests with this model and see, in conjunction with an amp meter and a load of wagons, whether we can get different types of running depending on where the shunt is. So because we've got the lug on this Wrenn model, I think it'll be quite easy to retrofit the old Hornby W.R system and give it a bit of a try out and see, is it just a gimmick? Does it work? I don't know, but it'll be something quite fun to look at, and I'm really looking forward to see if we do get any interesting results. So let me know what you think. So just a quick look at this. It's the older version with no nickel wheels, but a lovely looking chassis, quite absolutely excellent valve gear. There's the Hornby W.R pickup, and you can see it hasn't done a great deal of work, and the armature looks fairly clean. And you can see an interesting thing about these motors as well, something I should have probably pointed out in one of the servicing videos, is that it's quite variable how far the brush tubes are pressed in and go to the commutator. You can see there's quite a considerable gap where you can see the carbon brush on this Hornby W.R one. Let's take a look at the Wrenn one and see if it's the same. Now on the Wrenn one you can see that the brushes, there's not quite so much carbon visible. Now I do believe the commutator sizes are different between the two motors, so there's lots of different things to look out for. But I think when you're rebuilding one, it is an idea sometimes, if there's too much carbon brush sticking through, to see whether you can just press the brush tube a fraction further, just by a millimetre. I mean, obviously, if you wore the brushes right down, there'd be a point where they could completely ping out, wouldn't there? But I think it probably makes sense to have the brush tubes just a little bit nearer to the commutator. But you can see that that's got a much larger diameter commutator on the Hornby W2218 model, and the more refined modern Wrenn model, the actual commutator is slightly reduced. The windings are also different as well, so that's what accounts for the different type of running. So it will be interesting to see how a magnetic shunt fitted here might alter this slightly more refined newer version of the motor. Okay, I think that's enough of that now. That's something to look forward to. I'm just going to put these two Locos together and put the Hornby W01 aside, and we'll come back once I've got the 2-rail Wrenn item on the upward main line, ready to move off from the station with these really colourful Hornby coaches. So as you can see, I've got the Wrenn Loco back together and on the upward main line, and I'm going to see if I can just back it up to these coaches. Just make sure I'm on the right part of the controller. Just hopefully a coupling will have taken place, so let's try and move away. They're so smooth, these Locos. Look at that. Just going to follow it around and see if I can get a bit nearer to it when it comes around the other side of the layout, so we can perhaps count all the buffers. It's great to have this looking a bit better. So there's two big buffers at the front, they look okay. And then yeah, I can see the rear one nestling in there. So a few noises over the points and diamonds, but lots of weight. Right, well that's going quite nicely. So I'm just going to get the little 060 out now, which is in the station at the back. So this is getting up to express speed now. And they do run so nicely, these older Wrenn models. I set the back-to-back on these 14.2mm, and that seems to suit the Super 4 really nicely. I think it's time to speed up the little R1 a bit. Sounds just a little bit noisy, but the gear ratio is great. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this sort of revisit to this particular Loco. It's nice to go back to items that have been on the layout before that maybe need either a little bit of improving or just a small amount of repair. Well, I'm looking forward to next week and trying out that Hornby W00 magnetic shunt in this model to see whether it makes any difference. But for now I'm going to leave you with these two locos running on the layout, and we'll watch them for a little bit longer. So until the next video, I'll say thanks for watching and goodbye.